Okay, so when you hear the name of a great physicist, what's the first thing you think of? For most of us, it's the Nobel Prize, right? But what if I told you that for one of the absolute giants of physics, his Nobel-winning work wasn't even his best stuff? Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Chen Ning Yang, a true titan of the 20th century, to find out what his real legacy is. So, picture this. The year is 1957. C.N. Yang and his colleague T.D. Lee are in Stockholm, getting the Nobel Prize in physics. And what they discovered, well, it was a total bombshell. It was called Parity Non-conservation. And to put it simply, they proved that at the tiniest subatomic level, the universe can actually tell the difference between left and right. Now, that might sound kind of weird, but it completely overturned a law of physics everyone had just assumed was true for decades. It was a huge, huge deal. I mean, for just about any scientist out there, winning a Nobel is it. That's the peak, the absolute pinnacle of a career. So this has to be C.N. Young's greatest work, right? Well, here's where it gets interesting. The answer from a whole lot of physicists, and even from the person who wrote his biography, is a pretty shocking nope. And this one right here gets right to the heart of the whole story. It's from the preface to his own biography, and it makes this just jaw-dropping claim. It says that compared to something called the Young-Mills gauge theory, his Nobel Prize work, well, it's not even close in terms of depth and historical importance. This is the real foundation of his legacy, not the thing he won the prize for. So just how important is this Young-Mills theory? Well, let me put it this way. There's this informal ranking in physics called the Landau scale. Think of it like a hall of fame. At the very, very top, you've got your once-in-a-civilization geniuses, Newton and Einstein. But in that next tier down, and we're still talking absolute legends like Fermi and Dirac, you find C.N. Yang. And the reason he's in that club, it's not because of his Nobel. It's because of Young-Mills theory. That's what put him in the pantheon of physics gods. So you gotta ask, where does a mind like that come from? How do you even begin to develop the ability to think on that level? To get a sense of that, we actually have to go way back to his early years in a China that was being torn apart by war and unbelievable hardship. Just look at this. This was his university. I mean, can you even imagine trying to learn advanced physics here? This place, Southwest Associated University, was basically cobbled together from 3 other universities that had to flee the Japanese invasion. They had next to nothing. We're talking tin roofs, dirt floors, and windows with no glass. When it rained, the noise was so loud you couldn't hear a thing. And yet, somehow, inside these makeshift walls, pure genius was being forged. But here's the paradox. In terms of stuff, they were poor. But in terms of brain power, it might have been the richest university on the planet, because it had this incredible collection of China's most brilliant minds, all these legendary professors who had also escaped the war. And this is where Yang developed something he later called his scientific taste. It was this deep sense of what makes a theory beautiful and elegant, and he learned it from the absolute best. Yeah, forget about quiet libraries or sterile laboratories. Yang and his friends sharpened their minds in places like this. Noisy, chaotic, public tea houses. Can you picture it? They'd be sitting there for hours, surrounded by all sorts of people, and they'd be debating everything from ancient history to the deepest, most mind-bending questions in quantum mechanics. This is where the real work got done. All right, so after the war, Yang makes his way to the United States. And it's there, during the 1950s, that he just absolutely hits the peak of his powers. He reaches the summit of theoretical physics, and he doesn't just make one huge contribution, he makes 2. Okay, let's really break this down, because this is key. On one side, you have his Nobel Prize work, Parity Non-conservation. That was a revolutionary discovery. It was like finding out a fundamental rule of the game was just wrong. Totally groundbreaking. But then you have Yang-Mills theory. This wasn't a discovery, it was a framework. It's like one is finding a weird new gear, the other is inventing the entire engine. This theory became the actual bedrock for what we now call the standard model of particle physics, basically our entire understanding of how the universe works at a fundamental level. Its importance isn't just about a Nobel. People compare it to the work of Maxwell and Einstein. That's the level we're talking about. But look, Yang's story isn't just about the brilliant equations. His character, which was so deeply tied to his Chinese roots, is just as big a part of his legacy. And in the 1970s, that character was about to be put to a serious test. So in the 1970s, China was starting to open up to the world, and its scientific community was desperate to catch up with the West. And the big idea, the crown jewel project, was to build this massive, super expensive particle accelerator. It was a huge symbol of national pride, of scientific ambition, and pretty much every top scientist in the country was all for it. But Chen Yang, he wasn't on board. Not at all. As early as 1972, he started arguing against it. His logic was simple. In a country where millions of people were still struggling just to get by, was it really responsible to spend a fortune on this? He stood almost completely alone in this fight, even debating the country's most powerful leader, Deng Xiaoping, face to face. And when dozens of his fellow scientists signed a big letter pushing for the project, Yang refused to add his name. And this quote from a public letter he wrote explains exactly why. "I cannot in good conscience sign this document because I believe what is truly needed is not my signature, but the signature of the Chinese people." I mean, just think about that for a second. His argument wasn't about the physics. It was about principle. It was about the people. He felt that a project this huge needed the buy-in of the very people whose resources it would be using. It was just an incredibly courageous and deeply principled stand to take. Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. You've got the world-changing science, and you've got this incredible principled character. So what is the true legacy of Chen Yang? Well, it's really about how those two things are fused together. On the science side, his whole approach was driven by a sense of beauty. Remember that scientific taste he developed back in those tea houses? Like Einstein and Dirac, he was guided by a deep feeling for theories that were elegant, simple, and symmetrical. He truly believed that the basic laws of nature had to be beautiful. And you could say that the Yang-Mills theory is the ultimate masterpiece of that philosophy. So in the end, his legacy isn't just something you can write down in an equation. It's this incredibly rare combination of earth-shattering genius and just unwavering principle. It's a way of seeing the world that was shaped by his deep roots in Chinese culture, this sense of community, of being practical, of responsibility, and fusing that with a relentless, passionate hunt for the deepest truths of the universe. And that kind of leaves us with this really cool question to chew on, doesn't it? We're taught to think of science as this cold, hard, objective thing, but a life like Yang's makes you wonder. It suggests that these really subjective things, like a sense of beauty or taste, can be incredibly powerful tools for discovery. So it makes you ask, right? When we're searching for the ultimate truth, how much of it is pure logic, and how much is it really a form of deep, intuitive art?